Diabetes is when our cells cannot take up the glucose that is released into our bloodstream after we are done eating, naturally. In a non-diabetic, after we're done eating, glucose is released into the bloodstream, and pancreas releases insulin, which attaches to the receptors, and the receptors wake up the dormant proteins, which tell the GLUT4s to come to the surface of the cell membrane so that the glucose can get into the cell where it is used as ATP or energy. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas cannot release insulin, which in turn can wake up the dormant proteins, and the GLUT4s won't allow the glucose to get into the cell. In type 2 diabetes, the pancreas does produce insulin, but the receptors are resistant to the insulin, so the glucose cannot get into the blood cell.
Are you experiencing fatigue?
Frequent urination? Excessive thirst? Or extreme weight loss? If so, call your local doctor to have an insulin and glucose test run.
You will not eat prior to the glucose test, and then your doctor will give you a drink full of glucose and monitor your glucose levels over time.
In a non-diabetic, the glucose levels will rise and then come back to homeostasis. In both types of diabetes, the glucose levels will rise and not fall back down to homeostasis.
During the glucose test, the doctor will also monitor your insulin levels. In a non-diabetic, the insulin levels will rise and drop to allow glucose into the cell. In a type 1 diabetic, the pancreas does not produce insulin, which is why the insulin levels remain constant. In a type 2 diabetic, the insulin levels also rise, but unfortunately, the insulin cannot be used to allow glucose into the cell.
One doctor you can visit is a family medicine doctor. These doctors deal with diabetes and the parts of the body that affect and contribute to diabetes.
Another doctor you can see is your endocrinologist. Endocrinologists specialize in the endocrine system, where diabetes originates.
Also, internal medicine doctors care for adults with all problems, including and relating to diabetes.
Unfortunately, type 1 diabetes is genetic and cannot be prevented. However, type 2 diabetes can be prevented and treated through healthy eating habits and exercise. One treatment for type 2 diabetes, as said before, is healthy eating habits and exercise.
Since a type 1 diabetic cannot produce their own insulin, the doctor will most likely give them a recommendation for an insulin injection. Insulin injections are very effective if you're regularly checking your glucose levels with a finger prick.
Diabetes may affect your daily life in many ways. First, you have to constantly monitor your blood glucose levels and remember to inject insulin. Secondly, you'll have to remember to eat healthy and exercise constantly. Diabetes may affect loved ones, as you'll always be at the risk of diabetic emergencies, and you might have to step away from certain occasions to go to the bathroom.
Living with diabetes differs from living a normal lifestyle because you have to constantly keep track of how much food you're eating and your glucose intake. For the most part, your life is the same, but you're at constant risk of diabetic emergency.
Some diabetics feel misunderstood by non-diabetics. Type 1 diabetics want others to know that they're born with their disorder and there's nothing they could do about it, while type 2 diabetics know that it's not as easy as it seems to just watch what you eat and constantly exercise.
One long-term effect diabetes could have on a person is kidney disease. This occurs because of the high blood sugar, which makes the kidney filters have to work harder. After this goes on for a long time, the filters will move down and will not work efficiently. Once that happens, usable protein will be lost and exit your body through urine. Thank you for viewing our presentation.